Hey, I'm Paul Scheer.
I'm June Diane Raphael.
And I'm Jason Mantzoukas.
And we're the hosts of How Did This Get Made, a comedy podcast where we deconstruct, make fun of, and celebrate the best, worst movies ever made.
Have you ever seen a movie that's so bad that it's actually good? That's what we're talking about.
From blockbuster franchises and made-for-TV romances
to bonkers 80s action flicks and obscure sci-fi musicals, we cover it all.
You can find How Did This Get Made wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget to follow the show so you never miss an episode. Idiot.
When living with cancer, it's important to be informed and know what to expect. But finding the right information can feel overwhelming. That's why UnderstandCancerTogether.com is here to help. We've gathered practical information and resources based on where you are in your cancer journey, so that you can focus on the important conversations and decisions of today. UnderstandCancerTogether.com, helping you navigate life with cancer, one moment at a time.
Someplace underneath.
So I last night slept with the window open and my hair wet. Decision I made because I wanted to look pretty for today, but I got nice hair, but a sniffly nose.
Isn't that worth it, though?
It's worth it, right?
Good hair. Try not to chew this Twizzler into the microphone.
Big, beautiful hair. Well, my lunch today was a handful of barbecue lays. We're doing great.
Yeah,
We're doing great.
Sometimes that's what you got to do to get through the day. Just do it.
Yeah.
Eat the crap.
Eat the crap.
If it's making your day. Last night I had a microwavable Velveeta shells and cheese for dinner.
They have that in microwave time?
Girl.
I thought they just had it in like a dump it in a pot. No.
It's much less wasteful to have it just dump in a pot.
They've gotten scientifically more advanced? Wow.
I think they have.
Good for them.
Yeah, finally science is caught up with our microwave needs. Welcome to Someplace Underneath. I'm Natalie Jean.
I'm Amber Nelson.
Yeah, it's interesting, ironic even that we're talking about that, because that is a college child's dinner.
Oh, yeah.
And we are talking about colleges today.
I remember there was this girlfriend of mine in college who she just kind of came from money, and she said, I can't have ramens because I just hate the taste. I had it too much in high school because I liked it. And I'm like, girl, do you think I eat it because I like the taste?
You're like, yummy, ramen,
yum. I love
yum,
garbage.
Yeah, ramen's, listen, I'm not trying to hate on it. I had lots of ramen growing up, but it is just powder and noodles.
Yeah, sodium.
And I love sodium. I love me some salt.
Of course, but you got to get an egg in there. You got to get a green or two. I don't think I had a vegetable for over a decade in New York City because I was hustling. I was working. I was hitting the streets.
That's a big deal for you because you cook and you really pay attention to the foods you eat. And you didn't have a single vegetable, huh?
No, because I usually have my good proteins, like greens, fruits, healthy. Like me eating Lay's chips for lunch is kind of a big deal, Natalie. Oh. I don't know what I'm going to do.
Well, you got to choose your hair or your salad.
That's right. But we're talking about college and how these folks are going to the Mormon colleges.
These folks at these schools. Yes. Let's start very briefly. I'm going to keep doing brief recaps at the top because this is a lot of information. It's a big information dump. And I want it to be succinct and clear when we're talking about what we're talking about, right?
Right.
So the very brief recap that we have is Joseph Smith was a young man in New York in the early 19th century, and he had a, quote, revelation, or he saw an open market, or he wanted power, whatever you'd like to project onto him. He wrote this book called The Book of Mormon, which originally published in 1830.
Right.
He developed a following over the next decade, which followed him west to newly Americanized areas that now are states in what we'd call the Midwest, where he and his followers caused big old stinks, and the other settlers who were not a part of his church were not fans of them.
Tarred and feathered his ass.
They did. Due to some of Joseph and his saints, as they're called, actions, the governor of Missouri in 1838, Lilburn Boggs, sent out an extermination order for any Mormons.
Oh, he was just like, get him?
Yes.
Whoa.
When that happened, they fled to Illinois, where they were still on what I would call people's poop list, even there. And ultimately, Joseph Smith was executed in 1844 when he fell out of a window. From there, the church members were a bit rudderless, as that happens whenever the leader leaves. Think of when Forrest Gump was leading all of those people on that run, you know, and then he just kind of stopped and went, I think I'll go home now. And they all stood around and went like, well, what do we do? What do we do now? So that's sort of what happened after Joseph Smith died. From there, when this opening occurred, some of the guys tried to take over. And Brigham Young, one of Joseph's higher ups in the church, ended up winning the most members. And he took those members out even further west, eventually getting to a place that would become Salt Lake City. But at that time, was not a claimed territory other than the people who had lived there for a millennia.
Right. I mean, I bet when he was coming around the bend with a horse and carriages, they were just like, whoa, we're going to come like right here. It's gorgeous.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you do see, even in modern day Utah, why people think of it as this majestic magic land, because it looks like space. It looks like outer space.
Yeah.
It looks like somewhere, if you thought of heaven or a magic land, you would look at that place and go like, okay, that makes sense why they would think that. It's very beautiful and interesting and cool. And probably, I don't know, I've never settled anywhere personally. I imagine that they must have been able to find the resources they needed relatively easily. I'm putting relative on that because I'm sure it was still extremely difficult, but that must have been some sort of feeling of like a promised land, right? We've talked about the fracturing of the church after his death, and it's really, again, fascinating how short Joseph Smith's time on earth was, how short of a time he ran that church that has caused this many ripples. It clearly, his message spoke to a lot of people who had not been in this land very long, who were in an interim or a transition, an upheaval. Whether or not you agree with the colonization, you have to, know the people who were there were very likely confused and unsure of the future. And his message, his plan, gave them some sort of structure and cover. But so much of what became the church came directly from the reigning champion of the LDS boss wars, Brigham Young. Interestingly, Brigham, because I was looking that name up, because you don't really see Brighams much no more.
No.
It's a boy's name of Old English origin and Anglo-Saxon roots, and it means, quote, bridge, homestead, or settlement, which is... That's kind of curious,
fitting.
Because he did create a homestead and settle somewhere. Because yes, a settler is definitely what Brigham became. He's settlement the settler.
That's right. So I can name my kid like Cash Money.
And
he'll grow up rich.
He'll grow up rich. Okay. I mean, let's find out. You get pregnant.
Sure.
Have the kid. In 20, 30 years, we'll check back in, see if it worked out.
That's right. Cash money.
Cash money.
I feels like he's just going to be a party promoter.
You're not. I don't know if you're technically setting him up for success with the name Cash Money, but
no. All right. So Brigham Young. He is Brigham him young. Am I right?
Oh, he is. They're all technically pretty young, although he's at this age when he took over. He would have been in his late 40s, early 50s. Okay. He wasn't young, but Joseph Smith starting this church, he was a young man.
He was like 18. And he's like, listen to me.
Hey, you guys over there, listen to me. But it worked. So he's a real Logan Paul. So when we last left you, Brigham had moved to what would become Salt Lake City with the bulk of the saints, the members of the church who had followed Joseph Smith until his death. So that happened in the mid-40s. we went up to, in the last episode, talking about their growth all the way into the 1860s, where, you know, the U.S. was gearing up for the Civil War, which is a whole thing, but also the Transcontinental Railroad is being built. This is an entire, I mean, this is big years for what would become the U.S.
Transcontinental Railroad?
Yes.
What's next? Kids can't smoke cigarettes?
Yes, that is what's next, but not for a long time. Don't worry. For like 100 years, kids can still smoke cigarettes.
Okay.
People they're working on that railroad all the live long day, let me tell you, in the 1860s. And Brigham is thrilled for this. There were a lot of other religious folks who didn't like the idea of such a high-speed form of transportation showing up in their towns. You know, all the riffraff and the heathens could show up on the trains, right? But Brigham poo-pooed this. He was fully supportive of this upcoming railway system, going so far as to invest in it $5,000.
That's a lot of money even for today.
It is. But back then, very, very a lot of money.
It's like telling a kid, like, you get $1 billion bojillion.
Yeah.
Like, that's
actually,
what it feels like.
Let's see what the inflation would make it. Okay, so I'm getting, just based on the first thing the internet has told me, so definitely correct, that it would be almost $200,000 today. So, you know, that's this big old chunk of change. And so Brigham wanted this railway to come to his area with his people so much that he put money into it. And here, when you see this, you see even early ties to the U.S. government for the Mormon Church, whereas Joseph really was at odds with the U.S. government a lot, and they still maintained a lot of like tension with the U.S. government as Brigham Young took over. Brigham did seem to have a lot more ability to talk to the man, to be able to make deals with the U.S. government, to try to negotiate with them.
And that's a skill.
It absolutely is.
To walk in a room and be like, I'd like a railroad to come through, please. And not be like, I'm sorry. Hey, is it okay?
Yeah, well, I don't think that they taught the women of the Mormon Church to talk. I think they probably, that's one of the, you know, our heritage of saying I'm sorry too much as women probably came from this time period.
Right.
Brigham seemed, in my vantage from what I've read, to have a very broad vision of what the church was going to be. Like he saw it bigger than a church. He wanted it to be its own territory, and they tried to do that for quite a while. So when he took all of those people from Nauvoo, from Joseph Smith's world into Utah, what would become Utah, he did a lot of expansion in a relatively short amount of time. And, you know, it wasn't just him. I'm sure there was a lot of other people who contributed, but he was, for all intents and purposes, the full leader of them throughout that time period. And he said, not only do I want the railway to come through here and to bring people in, here's money. I'm going to actually buy this chunk of land north of Salt Lake City. And then he bought the land and then went, hey, U.S. government, I'll donate this land to you if you agree to make the land a little transportation hub. And Congress agreed.
Huh.
And in the summer of 1869, that is, the railroad and Mormonism came together as the Central Pacific and Union Pacific train lines connected in that little land above Salt Lake City known as Promontory, Utah. Pretty sure I'm saying that correctly. That is to say, the two major rail lines officially met in that spot right above Salt Lake City that late spring of 1869. And it was such a big deal. Promontory still exists today largely as a historic landmark. It was a big deal for the railway. To intrinsically link Brigham Young, Mormonism, and the expansion of America into all connected is not a far reach. They are all linked. America was largely connected to Mormonism in the West when it was being formed. early Mormons had their stamp on the very, very basis of the Wild West.
Young did not attend the festivities at Promontory Summit, but he participated in the groundbreaking for the Utah Central Railroad in Ogden a week later. The company, presided over by Young, immediately set to work constructing a rail link to Salt Lake City, which was completed by January 1870. Young drove the final spike in the ceremonial mallet that featured the faith's slogan, "Holiness to the Lord." The mixing of sacred and secular marketed the quixotic place that Utah now held in America's expanding empire. I looked up at Promontory, Utah, and it looks like something in an apocalypse movie, to be honest. Like, I thought it'd be like, oh, that's beautiful, but it's like, Oh, I feel like it's like where I would go get my body dumped.
Well, I don't. Is there actual homes there? I thought it was just a landmark.
It's just like this.
Oh, yeah. So that is essentially showing you the railroad. That is basically to go see history.
Right.
Yeah. So you don't want to go there to just like
vacation.
You don't want to meet somebody on a date there for the first time. It's going to end poorly.
No, but I met him on Tinder, and he said he had a picture that looked kind of old, but he said, "Come meet me by the train tracks."
Come meet me by the train tracks. This is just a general comment for any of you out there. If anybody asks you to meet at any train tracks, even new train tracks,
no,
don't go on the date.
I've definitely been drinking by train tracks before.
Oh, yeah. That's more of a fourth or fifth date, okay? That's how you know it's real.
Yeah, you got to share a cigarette and a bag of Cheetos, you know, by the train tracks.
Yeah.
That's like a wedding ring when they put the Funyuns on your finger.
Oh, yeah, that's cute. We used to use twist ties.
Oh.
The time period that this was all happening saw a great many changes for everyone, not just Mormons. And with all of this change, all of the fear, all of the excitement, all of the whatever is going to happen in these like transition periods, you're going to have all the expected push and pull from people. There were converts who are coming through town now through this train line. And they had, even at that time, there were missionaries going all over, including other countries, to bring people back to this church. They had missionaries from the get-go, which is something we'll get much more into later on in the season.
This might sound derogatory, but that kind of sounds like a pest does, when it's like, go out there and then get all of the victims or like the little bugs and bring them back to me.
Well,
like the bug that goes in the brain of the animal and it climbs to the tallest tree and then kills itself. Like that's what it sounds like.
You know, I don't think you're probably the first person to make that analogy around missionaries, which is not fair. Those people who are being forced to, and I'm saying forced because they are heavily encouraged, let's call it. They are children who they send out, even if they're legally adults, they're 18, 19, 20-year-old kids who have to go do this shit. And so please don't be mean to the missionaries.
Yeah, because they think they're going to burn in hell if they don't do this. And they don't eat. Like they're specifically not given food.
Many times. And if you listen to any ex-missionaries, ex-Mormons talk, it's often incredibly traumatic for missionaries. So please just don't be rude to them. They think they're doing what's right.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm Paul Scheer.
I'm June Diane Raphael.
And I'm Jason Mantzoukas.
And we're the hosts of How Did This Get Made, a comedy podcast where we deconstruct, make fun of, and celebrate the best, worst movies ever made.
Have you ever seen a movie that's so bad that it's actually good? That's what we're talking about.
From blockbuster franchises and made-for-TV romances
to bonkers 80s action flicks and obscure sci-fi musicals, we cover it all.
You can find How Did This Get Made wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget to follow the show so you never miss an episode. Idiot.
If you're frustrated with low sex drive, Vyleesi can help. Vyleesi, or bremelanotide, treats low sex drive in women with no daily medication, no alcohol restrictions, and no hormones. Vyleesi is clinically proven to increase your interest in sex. Take control of your sex life on your terms and visit Vyleesi.com to schedule a telemedicine appointment. That's VYLEESI.com. Vyleesi is a prescription medicine used to treat hypoactive sexual desire disorder, HSDD, in premenopausal women who have not had problems with low sexual desire in the past and have low sexual desire no matter the type of sexual activity, situation, or partner. The low sexual desire is troubling to them and is not due to medical, mental health, or relationship problems, or medicine or other drug use. Do not use Vyleesi if you have uncontrolled hypertension or known heart disease. The most common side effects include nausea, flushing, injection site reactions, headache, and vomiting. Consult your healthcare professional for more information and see full PI at Vyleesi.com or call 800-922-1038. Go to Vyleesi.com for a telemedicine appointment to find out if Vyleesi is right for you. That's VYLEESI.com.
Because they were sending these missionaries out all over the place, the train line was great. It gets people right to this new town, this new Salt Lake City, Brigham Young's people. And of course, also, there was a great many people coming through because of the famous, California and U.S. gold rush. This was also the gold rush time. If you've ever watched the series Deadwood, this is just a few years before that show takes place, which again, I think I've brought up Deadwood a lot because I love that show, but it is also kind of in the relation to this time period.
I've never seen it. It's just like Wild West cowboys, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But is it like the real cowboys? Like they weren't beautiful men on a horse. They were kind of stanky.
I mean, Timothy Oliphant's pretty much a beautiful man, but it has, okay, listen, I'm not going on a Deadwood tangent here, but it has been, celebrated for having historical accuracy in many ways. Oh. I imagine, the teeth probably would not look like they do.
They didn't have veneers for sure.
Yeah, but great show. So this is not much where we're talking about with the rail and Brigham Young and Salt Lake City being founded. That's just a few years before the show Deadwood takes place. HBO's Deadwood. Okay. And even the most devout Mormon followers, just like any religion, are going to have their own opinions and disagreements with their leaders. And Brigham faced near as many conflicts from the U.S. government as Joseph Smith. So it's not like it's this like peace and harmony and like everything was working out great all the time for him. But he did manage to do a lot of shit in this time period. And like I was saying before, Brigham maintained this level of decorum with the government, but they definitely didn't like him declaring his own territory, which is what was being attempted in the late 1840s into 1850. We'll get into those changes a little bit later in episodes, but at the time of this great railroad expansion, Brigham had been overseeing their flock, the Mormon flock, for 2 decades.
I will say maybe a positive this is I'm sure these little railroad towns weren't full of saloons.
Not this one.
Not this one. Because I imagine an old West town, and I bet it's like a saloon, and everybody's passed out and like shooting each other in front of it. And this is just like,
I think there was a lot of shooting each other still.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, nothing's ever that easy or breezy when you're trying to conquer a land, right?
Right.
But I will say that using the town building plans that Joseph Smith had prepared for, even though he didn't know about Utah or Salt Lake City or this land, Joseph Smith had been building these blueprints for what he considered the new Zion, which we've talked about in past episodes. Joseph Smith was convinced, or at least wanted people to believe, that the U.S. was also this like holy land, like the Midwest was this new Zion, right?
Right.
So he had built all these blueprints. And by all accounts, Brigham Young used these blueprints to lay out what would become Salt Lake City. And it's basically just grids inside a picturesque valley is what Salt Lake City became.
Perfect for a McDonald's and a Costco.
Oh, it has so many of them now. Don't worry. But it is kind of funny that this was the time period when everyone was figuring out grids.
Right. You know, when I think of Zion, I think of a Costco parking lot. Mm-hmm. You know, just those big trucks just honking at me.
Yeah. Even though there's so many parking spaces, there's no open ones. Yeah. And you don't understand why. I know. God, that's just, I hope that's what's going to happen after we go.
That's right.
Joseph Smith had these grid plans. However, he most definitely swiped the idea of that from Thomas Jefferson, but sort of claimed it as his. He said, I got these grid plans from God. But actually, Thomas Jefferson had already come up with this idea. But in the age when you couldn't get readily found information, it was a lot easier to just say stuff came from God.
How did he get it from Thomas Jefferson?
I imagine why he took those plans and found them. So Thomas Jefferson was alive until 1826. And so that would have been before the Book of Mormon came out, right? However, that was a time when he may have studied things that Thomas Jefferson had written or put out that not everybody had access to.
Right.
So if you had access to books and you were well read, like you already kind of had an up on certain things.
Wow, it's almost like education is
Shut up, you whore.
gets you ahead in the world. Almost.
Shut up. Shut the fuck up. So, yes, he told his people that he had, these divine ideas, but it was because other people had come up with them. And that's okay. What plan is really original? But he did say that like God told him, which is kind of bullshit. But anyway, Brigham took these ideas and he created these grid systems for what would become Salt Lake City. And you see, like I put this like woodcut painting in the notes here, Ember, and it is a stunning, beautiful valley. Like, look at that. That does look very lovely.
They're all getting ready to have dinner on the ground. There's a big railroad right in the middle cutting through mountains.
Big old street there. And because at least the way that it's being written, we'll never know exactly how it was, but Brigham was revered by many in the community, and he enjoyed a fat lifestyle as the big boy overseeing all of the leaders of this expanding church in town.
Oh, he had all the milk and honey for himself?
I mean, he definitely did. Beyond founding Salt Lake City and purchasing the land above Salt Lake City for that railway, he was also the proud owner of a compound in the southwest of the territory known as St. George, which was founded in 1861 with the help of an early apostle of the LDS named Erastus Snow.
I don't like that name. I'm going to go ahead and say he's probably not a good guy. I'm going to pass a little judgment here.
Well, you got to remember at this time, they're definitely like going full hog on polygamy. And so I think you're just going to have to take the word of people. There's going to be a lot of perspectives on what's good and bad. And at this time, I probably would have not cared for him.
Right.
The Snow family, however, will show up quite a bit in our story and the story of Mormonism. So St. George, there's all of these areas around Salt Lake City. They're expanding this territory. And Brigham Young has a bunch of different homes and compounds. And I just wanted to show you, Amber, this as this picture here, which you can still go visit right now, is his summer estate, his winter estate. That's where he would go for his winterings.
This is huge, even by today's standards.
Mm-hmm.
And I know at this time, you could have a shack and they'd be like, you're living well. But this is like a 2-story house.
Mm-hmm.
Whoa.
Yeah. And you can go visit this house in St. George, Utah. But a warning that the church bought this house back from the government because the government had dictated it as like a historic landmark. But then with all of their big old paycheck, their big old gold, silver pockets, silver-lined pockets. The church bought it back in the 70s. So if you do go visit, it is overseen by missionaries, and they will very likely try to convert you.
It
would be cool to see it, though. I wouldn't be opposed to going and seeing these landmarks. I think it's fascinating. And fun weird fact about Brigham's winter home in St. George, Utah. The person who designed it is named Miles Romney, whose direct descendant is, you guessed it, Mitt Romney.
Good old Mitt. Imagine birthing a baby and you're like, what do you want to name him? Mitt?
I don't know what that comes from, but I imagine it's a Mormon thing.
It's almost like people with a lot of money are descendant from people
with a lot of money.
From people with a lot of money. It's like generational wealth, I think.
Oh, you should patent that.
Whoa.
That's a really...
Maybe like owning a home helps out too.
Huh.
Like education, owning a home.
This is why there will never be a woman president. This more vacation-y home is in addition to Brigham's main compound in Salt Lake City. And his main compound is still a thing that exists as well. You can see a picture of it here. You can find the picture easily. I'll probably post it on socials, but
It's beautiful.
It's massive. And this is only a portion of it because he had many wives at the end of his life. But this was where he did business. Part of it was a private residence, and they had like a hall in there, but it was like his. So it was the St. George, the Winter Estate. The first photo I showed you, Amber, is the place where he spent a lot of his final years. He had reached his 70s at that point and had a series of ailments that were difficult to deal with. One of which involved inserting his own catheter, which he rubbed consecrated oil on prior to its insertion.
You know, I was about to make a joke. I was like, what, his dick fell off? But I was like, no, that's too crass, Amber. But it's true.
It's not that far off.
It's true.
He definitely had to insert his own catheter, which he put he put like essential oils on it, basically.
Put the oil on the tube.
Leading up to
his... in my P.O.
That's just a precursor for all the young living MLM girlies who would be in the Mormon church 150 years later.
Right. Can't you just wait for a man to take care of you so you could just put a catheter in his withered piss hole?
Who are you talking to? Me?
I just mean for the world.
For the world. So this is now, he's in his 70s towards the end of his life. He's now been building this town of Salt Lake City for several decades, right? During his twilight years,
Young's enormous family experienced substantial changes during these years. The prophet reported a $100,000 salary and $2 million in assets in the 1870 census, but that wealth was unevenly split among his wives.
yes.
Sorry, I got grossed out calling him the prophet.
Though that's big. That's a big word in the Mormon church.
He's not Muhammad.
They all no. They think that they're all prophets. All of the bosses, the leaders, all think they're prophets. So, or at least they want people to think that they are.
True.
So, yes, much like Joseph Smith, Brigham decided that the Lord was telling him he needed to bang a bunch of women who weren't his wife, but it was cool because it was doctrinally sound or whatever.
Right.
So just as Joseph faced immense backlash for polygamy, so did Brigham. But dogs got a sniff.
All right, arf.
And he spent his final years rallying for that commune lifestyle. He also essentially took the hierarchical structure that Smith had started and finalized. So at the end of Brigham's life in the 1870s, he was asserting that polygamy was still very important to their church, to being the most righteous. And he also basically put into paper the system in which Joseph started the church, but he made it more almost corporatized, where he dictated every leadership role that was going to go on for the church and it did to the year 2024. Really? It's the same setup, same groups of people, the quorum of the 12, all of those things still exist completely the way he set it up.
And no one's ever been like, hey, wait a minute.
No, I don't think so. I mean, not really. Yeah, there's definitely been dissension and stuff, but like the church has they are really into traditionalism with this shit. So, I mean, they have, obviously, we'll get into, polygamy was a thing that they dealt with. We're going to have a whole polygamy episode, but we know, obviously, there is a branch that still practices polygamy that came from this church called the FLDS, but that's not the mainstream LDS church. That is to say, in doing these tasks at the end of his life, Brigham Young, he likely played a larger role in the church expansion than maybe even Joseph Smith himself.
Young dedicated his final years to reorganizing the church's hierarchy. He formalized the secession process within the Quorum of the 12 in a way that demoted Orson Pratt and Orson Hyde, two apostles with whom he had clashed, in favor of leaders who had proved to be reliable allies. He standardized stake and ward structures, dividing the former into more manageable units and granting bishops more control over the latter.
It was essentially putting together a little mini government.
Oh, like his own little constitution?
Yeah, kind of. And it wasn't even that outlandish because at the time, the U.S. was also trying to just like establish itself as well. It was a bit chaotic, I'm going to say, probably. In the summer of 1877, Brigham's appendix exploded.
Uh-oh.
He was 76 years old, and he had 56 wives and almost 60 children.
56? How do you even keep, count? Bethany. I mean, Bartholomew. I mean, Mary. I mean,
I don't think he was really spending a lot of time with all of them, but God knows. Yes, so he had 56 separate wives in 1877 when he died from appendix explosion. Is that appendicitis, probably?
Sure. His dick hole ain't work no more. Because he put a little tube in it.
Put a little tube in it.
It got all crusty.
I think it's something that in modern era would most likely not result in ultimate immediate death.
Right.
You know what I mean? But at the time, I mean...
Just like crusty little yellow bits on his dick hole. Do you think he was circumcised?
You know
what I mean? I guess not.
I don't.
So he had an unwashed tip full of yellow boogers.
Ugh, God. In fairness to him, probably most of the guys did.
Yeah. But, fuck him.
Yeah. So that was the year that he passed away. We're not going to gloss over the wives. Again, we'll talk about polygamy. Don't worry. Following Brigham's death, there was a succession of presidents of the church. First, a member named John Taylor. John Taylor also had a long-standing history with the church and was there the day that Joseph Smith was killed. John Taylor was succeeded by Wilford Woodruff.
Wilford Woodruff.
Who was succeeded by Lorenzo Snow, who was succeeded by Joseph F. Smith, the nephew of the founder Joseph Smith, and on and on and on. Today, Brigham Young's LDS Church is on its 17th president, whose name is Russell M. Nelson.
That's my last name.
Yeah, maybe you're related.
We could be.
He was currently 100 years old, and he gives off the aura and vibes of a sleep paralysis demon, in my opinion. Wow. Each one of these men and their contributions has made the church what it is today, both positive and negative. Each has been a white man. Each has claimed to be a direct phone line to the Almighty. That's because each has claimed to be a prophet, receiving revelations from the creator of the cosmos. And you are not going to believe this, but pretty much every revelation has been something that benefits the church financially.
Wow. I can't get over he's 100 years old, so he's seen World War II.
Yeah.
He's seen...
He lived in segregation, just like the church really celebrated segregation. Whoa. We'll get into that. Don't worry. But yeah, he's a 100-year-old man. They just had his 100th birthday party, which you can see online.
Is he just
haunting,
like sitting in a chair like an old cat? Like, hey.
Yeah, there's like balloons and he's kind of staring at them like a baby. But he's still the leader, don't worry.
Do you think they're going to elect like a young fun guy like they did with the Pope who's just like, hey, dogs can go to heaven too?
Well, maybe in comparison to Russell M. Nelson, but to compare to him, 60 is pretty young. You know what I mean? Like it's going to be an older man for sure.
Hey, I'm Paul Scheer.
I'm June Diane Raphael.
And I'm Jason Mantzoukas.
And we're the hosts of How Did This Get Made, a comedy podcast where we deconstruct, make fun of, and celebrate the best, worst movies ever made.
Have you ever seen a movie that's so bad that it's actually good? That's what we're talking about.
From blockbuster franchises and made-for-TV romances
to bonkers 80s action flicks and obscure sci-fi musicals, we cover it all.
You can find How Did This Get Made wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget to follow the show so you never miss an episode, idiot.
If you're frustrated with low sex drive, Vyleesi can help. Vyleesi, or bremelanotide, treats low sex drive in women with no daily medication, no alcohol restrictions, and no hormones. Vyleesi is clinically proven to increase your interest in sex. Take control of your sex life on your terms and visit Vyleesi.com to schedule a telemedicine appointment. That's VYLEESI.com. Vyleesi is a prescription medicine used to treat hypoactive sexual desire disorder, HSDD, in premenopausal women who have not had problems with low sexual desire in the past and have low sexual desire no matter the type of sexual activity, situation, or partner. The low sexual desire is troubling to them and is not due to medical, mental health, or relationship problems, or medicine or other drug use. Do not use Vyleesi if you have uncontrolled hypertension or known heart disease. The most common side effects include nausea, flushing, injection site reactions, headache, and vomiting. Consult your healthcare professional for more information and see full PI at Vyleesi.com or call 800-922-1038. Go to Vyleesi.com for a telemedicine appointment to find out if Vyleesi is right for you. That's VYLEESI.com.
So there is much to be said about each of these men, the presidents of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. The women, too, who, while never achieving priesthood, which is what they call getting a high up, being in favor of God and the church, women can't attain priesthood. And they can't achieve full leadership roles, but they have roles, and some of them have participated in really insidious and harmful, even criminal behavior. Through all of the different, very pale, very susceptible to sunburned faces who have filtered through leadership in the LDS Church, the leader following Joseph Smith, Brigham Young, is one of the most regarded, most honored, most credited with the church the way that it is today.
Because it seems like Joseph Smith set up the religion, but Brigham Young set up the institution within the religion.
I think that's a very fair point. Yes, I think that is a great way to put it. So he really was able to streamline it, turn it into almost the business that it is.
Right.
So if you know anything about the LDS Church, you probably don't know the names of each of those presidents, but you probably have heard of Brigham Young because of the school, Brigham Young University.
Right. Where they have all these crazy rules like, we can't go leave our house a dorm at night. Ha, ha, ha.
Yes, there are, and we'll definitely talk about that. There are some very
strict rules. I feel like I went to LSU, and I think they would have had a heart attack at my school.
I imagine your school was a lot more about I just imagine you surf on alligators and drink.
Yeah, drinking is a major. Mm-hmm. You know?
Same with my college, for sure.
Right.
Although my college had a sober dorm, it also had a conservative, but in a positive way. My college had it was about a third Jewish. They had a Hillel. They had religion. They had a chapel on campus, but it was still secular. It was still liberal arts, but they were very respectful of people who wanted to live in that way. But the people who didn't live like that. They lived like little heathen animals on campus.
Right. And not to say that drinking's cool and if you're sober, you're a loser. But
it's nice to be able to make your own decisions.
Just make your own decision. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, you've probably heard of Brigham Young University if you've ever heard anything about the Mormon Church. And while that is a school obviously named after him, he didn't technically found that school. He didn't technically, how do you say that?
Found it?
He found it. He didn't technically start that school. He did, however, construct another very early into their trek west and settling in of what would become Salt Lake City. Brigham was set on developing schools in his new land, which sounds great and all, but sometimes people can use the term school and it can kind of be a loose definition of school, right?
I can go to school with the School of Counting Clouds.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that's what he was doing, but you have to sort of go okay, well, what were they teaching in these alleged schools? So let's look. The first school by Brigham of higher learning was opened up in 1850. So remember, this is only a couple years after Brigham took over the church, only a couple years after Joseph Smith was killed. And that school in 1850 would eventually become what is now known as the University of Utah. But at the time was called University of Deseret.
So is the University of Utah like the top dog? Because it's the oldest?
It's a highly regarded school.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Let me look up the how much it costs.
Do it. Yeah. It's mostly wealthy white people.
$9,315 for in-state, $29,837 for out-of-state.
Yeah.
And that's just for 1 year.
It's for a year?
I think. Yeah. Yeah, it says out-of-state
it's not affordable, but it's not as expensive as some schools. But that's, it's not cheap. As a reminder, also, the word Deseret comes up quite a bit in Mormon lore. And that is a word that comes from Joseph's special Book of Mormon word list. I'm going to be defining things repeatedly throughout this season because, as you're probably already aware, the creation of special languages, rituals, and gestures that only your group knows creates a bond that can span generations. The Mormon Church has definitely utilized this practice since its inception. It's definitely helped them maintain levels of secrecy that are a detriment to a lot of people. But Deseret comes from their special language.
Okay.
According to Joseph Smith, it's a word that means honeybee, and it has a lot of meaning in their church.
Oh, because honey, like bees create honey and they have this like magical algorithm. Like bees are pretty magical.
Bees are magical. They're not wrong.
So they're like taken from that. Okay.
So Brigham opened the University of Deseret in 1850. And this is also in reference to the fact that they would eventually concede to the U.S. government and accept the land that they were on as the state of Utah. But before then, in the years of the late 1840s into 1950, Brighamites considered the land that Utah now stands on was called the state of Deseret. So they tried to make a whole state of their own. It's like their own territory. And because the U.S. and Mexico and all of these people were trying to fight for the land that Salt Lake City was on in this time period. So Brigham was like, we're just going to make it something. It's called the State of Deseret. That's what it's called. Also, Deseret scholars believe Joseph took from an Egyptian phrase. So nothing's ever fully just like made up. One person made something up 5,000 years ago, and then we just keep like repeating it differently. So Joseph Smith did kind of create the word Deseret, but it is an Egyptian word also.
Okay, cool.
At the time, the school was pretty bare bones, and there wasn't a building dedicated to it for quite a few years because they were building their city still. So when they finally got to that land, he kind of wanted to set up a school right away because he wanted to like train people essentially. The academic history of Mormon education is quite interesting, actually, because much of what you might assume that maybe it was doctrinal or lacking objective learning wasn't always the case. There had always been a battle for the spirit and the soul of the Mormon Church. And in the years leading up to and following Brigham's death, there were many voices in the church who wished to provide top-notch education to its members, including women.
Because, at the end of the day, they know that the women are raising the kids, and you don't want your next generation of men to be idiots.
Some people, there was a big push, push and pull. Some people really thought this was a good idea, and others were not happy about it.
Oh, okay.
Eliza Snow, another Snow that we're going to talk about, she was one of Joseph Smith's wives, who was then sort of just like handed over to Brigham when Joseph died, which is what happened with a lot of wives at the time when their husbands died. They didn't get to have things. They were just like, well, you get to be another guy's wife now.
Oh, it's like a car.
Yeah.
Yeah, like if I die and I have a Porsche, then it's like, well, what happens to the Porsche?
Porsche goes to one of your bros.
Yeah, it can't just drive itself.
No.
Come on.
It's fucking crazy. So Eliza Snow ended up being one of Brigham's wives, and I would call her what you might call also a bit of a feminist.
Oh.
And she was one of the figureheads for the lady organization within the Mormon Church known as the Relief Society, something that still exists. And she had a lot of plans and intentions for the women of the community when these schools were being built.
Snow announced in 1873 that the Relief Society would sponsor several women to travel east to be trained in medicine. This was part of a wider effort in the church to send their best and brightest to America's top universities in order to prove their cultural competency and bring various expertise back to Utah, so long as the students refused to forfeit the doctrinal fundamentals. So it's like, go and learn, but don't be doing
too
that
much
Jezebel stuff.
Yeah. So there was a hunger for knowledge even then, though that argument over whether or not academia had to hold space for the very specific Mormon beliefs has never fully been resolved, and it certainly wasn't then at the time.
Right, because we were asking about medicine. Mm-hmm. We interviewed some people from the Mormon Church, and we were like, so what about medicine? Mm-hmm. Like, what do they do in science class?
Yeah, and they have some things to say, which we'll talk about. We'll be releasing some of those interviews coming up very shortly. Regardless of any of that, the University of Deseret was eventually renamed the University of Utah in 1892. Today, University of Utah still exists and is pretty well regarded as a school, and it doesn't have no longer it has direct connections to Mormonism. So it is a state school now.
Oh.
There is something to be said about how many Mormons end up there and how many people we're going to cover on this season who've come from this institution and go on to do some very questionable things. But that will be for the next episodes.
But is this kind of like go forth and learn, but don't learn too much? Is it kind of like what this is? Like, hey, we're a state university. Anybody can join, but it's not going to be not that communist agenda you learned at LSU.
Well, that is a big question, which is one thing we've been trying to solve during the season. And we have spoken to some people who you'll hear from about exactly how much influence happens from the Mormon Church today at the University of Utah. And regardless of what you think, there are many networking connections that happen between Mormons at this school. It is effectively a secular public school with programs sought after enough that people attend it for non-religious reasons. But yes, the vast majority of this college is white, wealthy, and many of them are Mormons. And you can feel the effects of the conservatism in that it is a dry campus that also allows concealed carry.
Well, I guess if you're going to have a gun, don't be drunk. I guess they got that right.
I guess that's great.
Sure. My brother went to a dry school, and I was like, what did you do? And he's like, we studied. Like, what are you talking about?
Well, one of my friends went to a dry school, but they all still drank. They just hid it. It was also a sex divided. Like, if you wanted to be on his level of dorm after a certain time, like, we had to sneak in. But people still did it.
I mean, I guess on a positive note, there's probably less sexual assaults on campus.
Oh, no, you're probably not correct on that. Unless, I'm not going to go by the statistics here, but I know from Liberty University statistics, it is not lowering the sexual assault rate.
Okay,
so
great.
Yeah, don't worry. People can do that sober as hell. Honestly, though, with the concealed carry thing, that's not even on the school. It's Utah. Utah deemed that any college kids should be allowed to conceal carry their guns.
Right.
The state colleges should be rich with guns, they think. So University of Utah has a pretty respected science department. That's good. There will be a number of reasons that I'm bringing up this school, but even more so, I'd like to call attention to the other academic institution we mentioned earlier. This one is a private school, which means the situation is a little more what we'll call kooky. A little bit more able to wiggle around some stuff,
Okay.
While its origins are a bit intermingled with the University of Deseret, it's not credited as a direct successor. But we'll call BYU a spin-off. And yes, actually, Brigham Young himself did, in fact, first name this spin-off after himself, calling it the Brigham Young School for Getting Bitches. Just kidding. He called it Brigham Young Academy, and it was ordained that in 1875. if you're keeping track, that was just 2 years before Brigham's death. And if I were to wager, he was probably reaching the end of his life. He probably knew he was reaching the end of his life, and he was attempting to create a legacy, which he really did. He did create a legacy for himself. So the University of Deseret turns into the University of Utah, becomes a state school. This other spinoff that Brigham calls the Brigham Young Academy is started in 1875, and Brigham Young University credits this as the beginning of their school. According to BYU's origin story, Young said of their school,
I hope to see an academy established in Provo, at which the children of the Latter-day Saints can receive a good education unmixed with the pernicious, atheistic influences that are found in so many of the higher schools of the country.
And I'm not saying that BYU made that statement up, but that is very much what they want to have aligned with their mission statement to this day. And it is what they still consider their goal with their school. So where University of Utah sees a fair amount of outsiders, a little less than half of the students polled have stated they never grew up with LDS doctrine. So that's like 50% outsiders at University of Utah.
Okay.
BYU, from its inception, is almost exclusively Mormon. Campuses logging between 98 and 99% of their students proclaiming themselves Mormons.
What's that 1%? What's up with them?
I imagine that they get there based on some program. You know what I mean? Like they are.
Right.
I'm not actually sure off the top of my head what their most sought after courses are, but I imagine it has something to do with like whatever they're teaching there. It's probably also, I would imagine also people who are already coming from conservative families would maybe consider BYU at least prudish enough.
Right, of like, our little Billy. Well, we're not Mormon, but this school's got the chops.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, okay.
While I personally, Natalie, think higher education is almost never a bad thing, there is a connection to some of the criminals, deviants, and harmful Mormons and these two schools. It's my personal opinion that one of the contributing factors to how and why the Mormon Church has thrived beyond other high control groups is their connection to academia and their ability to warp and mold what that means for the last 15 decades. The next episodes, we're going to begin to explore what sort of lasting effects combining psychology, religion, and fear have wrought upon us all.
Dun, dun, dun. Because I guess if you train them in college, you can be like, all right, you're like a really smart person. Mm-hmm. We're going to indoctrinate you with our beliefs. Now go off and work for the FBI.
You're not wrong.
Oh, okay. Oh, I thought it was being like superfluous, but all right.
No.
Once again, I thought I was making a joke and I'm actually right.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty close. And it's had some really interesting and what I would consider harmful effects.
And I guess they're already non-drinkers, so it's like you don't have to worry about a drug test on them.
They are a lot of them are not sober, but I don't know. Okay, I'm going to say something.
Okay.
Sometimes people who put themselves on a high pedestal in religious groups are hypocritical.
Whoa.
And they lie.
Holy shit. Okay.
So there are people who we're going to discuss within that group that we just talked about who came from these schools who say one thing and behave in a different way.
I can't do secret drinking. Like I went to a dry wedding once and they were like, do you want to sneak some alcohol? And I'm like, I don't want to pretend to be sober.
Yeah.
Like that sucks.
Yeah, that would feel weird. Especially everyone else is like bone cold sober and you're just like, hey, is there
food buffet over there?
Yeah. So it just seems like you like have had a head injury or something.
Right.
Yeah. And not only that, we'll talk about in future episodes something that is not forbidden within the LDS community is piles and piles of prescription drugs. So there are many ways to not be sober within the community.
Oh, shit. And I bet if you go get plastic surgery, then the doctor's like, hey, let's give you little pain meds for that.
Pain meds, pain medication, pain pills are definitely an issue. In all communities, really, but definitely also inside the Mormon community.
Not the people that tuck in their shirts, Natalie.
I know. You think the tails are gone? Everyone's safe. that's not the case.
Oh, well, this is going to be super exciting.
Yeah, sure.
This show is made possible by listeners like you. Thanks to our ad sponsors, you can support our shows by supporting them. For more shows like the one you just listened to, go to lastpodcastnetwork.com.
Hey, I'm Paul Scheer.
I'm June Diane Raphael.
And I'm Jason Mantzoukas.
And we're the hosts of How Did This Get Made, a comedy podcast where we deconstruct, make fun of, and celebrate the best, worst movies ever made.
Have you ever seen a movie that's so bad that it's actually good? That's what we're talking about.
From blockbuster franchises and made-for-TV romances
to bonkers 80s action flicks and obscure sci-fi musicals, we cover it all.
You can find How Did This Get Made wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget to follow the show so you never miss an episode. Idiot.
Hey everybody, Conan O'Brien here with an ad about my podcast, Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend. I've had so many fantastic conversations with people I truly admire, people like Michelle Obama, Bruce Springsteen, Maya Rudolph, Tom Hanks. New episodes are out every Monday, and we have a really good time, so subscribe and listen wherever you get your podcasts.